So hello there and welcome back to the second video of this series, where today we'll take a look at the best and worst recordings of Ruggero Leoncavallo's masterpiece I Pagliacci. If you haven't yet watched my first video, which is on the recordings of Tosca, feel free to check that out to understand how the series works, and let's get straight into it. Since the opera's premiere in 1982, conducted by Arturo Toscanini, there has been around 100 recordings of this work, which are significant in nature. And let's take a look at the premiere cast. All five of them have actually recorded something. Canio is Fiorello Giraud, Nedda is sung by Adelina Stelle, Tonio is sung by Victor Maurel, Pepe is Francesco Dadi, and Silvio is Mario Ancona. But interestingly, out of this five, only Silvio Mario Ancona had recorded some sort of excerpt from Pagliacci, and it's not even from his role because he participated in the premiere as Silvio, and he had only recorded Tonio's prologue. But anyway, let's move on to our checkpoints. Let's start with the main baritone character, Tonio. The first checkpoint I've chosen here is from his famous prologue. I'd say that the lines you need to listen to start from Dunque vedrete amare to the end of the prologue. So this prologue is actually very interesting because if memory serves, this is the only, significant operatic excerpt in which the singer needs to break character and sing to the audience as the singer himself and not as a character. What makes it so difficult, except from the top A flat and top G natural at the end of the aria, is that this prologue is very pensive in nature. It has to it has to move you to tears, so to speak. But at the same time, the rest of the role of Tonio is actually an evil role. So it's difficult to find a baritone who can both break your heart in the prologue and make you feel as the villain in the rest of the opera. So the lines I've chosen here go like this. The lyrics in English are, "Now then, you will see men love, as in real life they love, and you will see true hatred and its bitter fruit, and you will hear shouts of both rage and grief, and cynical laughter. Mark well, therefore, our souls, rather than the poor players' costumes we wear. For we are men of flesh and bone, and like you, we breathe the same air of this lonely orphan world. This then is our story. Now give heed to its unfolding. On with the show and let us begin." So, as you can see, the lyrics here in the prologue are extremely different from the rest of the opera, in which he leads eventually to the murders of Nedda and Silvio. So, it's really difficult to, in the prologue, create a character that the audience has to sympathize with, and then when the opera goes on, become a villain. There are very few baritones that can do both at the same time, sing with a tear-like quality in the prologue and sing with evil intent in the rest of the opera. I'd say that Leonard Warren, Lawrence Tibbett, Ettore Bastianini does it well. People like Capuccilli are not evil enough for the rest of the opera, and baritones like Anselmo Colzani are just way too evil, with too much bite for the prologue that it doesn't move you. The highlight of this excerpts fall on the high A flat, obviously, and the lyrics of that line goes, "E che di quest'orfano mondo al pari di voi spiriamo all'aere." The A flat falls on the word voi, which is you from We Are Men of Flesh and Bone, like you breathing the same air of this orphan lonely world. So obviously a high A flat for a baritone is an extremely difficult note to hit. And at the same time, given the context of these lyrics, that A flat has to be sung with incredible beauty. He needs to cover it, and it needs to have a bit of anguish and suffering in it so that the listeners can hear the humanity of the character in one single note. The baritone who does this note best, and hence the whole prologue best, I believe, is Lawrence Tippett. So let's compare his most heartbreaking version of the prologue with one that I consider uninspiring, and so you can know what to expect listening to a prologue and to determine whether or not it's a tonio worth listening.
Ora ascoltate come gli ascolto. Andiamo, incominciate.
So moving on to Tonio's actual character in the opera, we have our second checkpoint for Tonio, which falls at the end of his Act 1 duet with Nedda. It goes like this. So after Nedda rejects Tonio's advances and lashes him across the face with a whip, Tonio sings this: Per la Vergine Pia di Mesagosto, Nedda, lo giuro, me la pagherai. By the Holy Virgin of the Assumption, Nedda, I swear, you'll pay for this. So this is the line that foreshadows the eventual death of Nedda at the very end of the opera. So it needs to be sung with incredible hatred and incredible bite. So let's have a listen. So next up are the two checkpoints I've chosen for the most important character in the opera, Canio. The first one is actually the entirety of his famous aria, Vesti la giubba, starting from the recitative before that, which goes recitar mentre preso dal delirio. The entire thing is only a bit longer than 2 minutes long, so it's not that much, but the emotions that he has to show in one aria is unparalleled, because you have to go from hatred to, sorrow to despair in one aria, and it's difficult to, very obviously show the hatred at the start of the aria and then turning into despair at the end. So the aria has lyrics going like this: perform the play while I'm racked with grief, not knowing what I say or what I do, and yet I must force myself to do it. Bah, are you not a man? You a Pagliaccio. Put on the costume, the powder, and the paint. The people pay, and they want to laugh. And if Harlequin steals your Columbine, laugh, Pagliaccio, and all will applaud you. Change all your tears and anguish into clowning, and into a grimace your sobbing and your pain. Laugh, Pagliaccio, at your shattered love. Laugh at the sorrow that has poisoned your heart. So what you want to hear from this aria is a very, rage-filled and filled with hatred in the recitative part of this aria, before the words Vesti la giubba. Especially, you need to hear a lot of bite and a very cynical sound on the words Sei tu forse un uomo? Tu sei Pagliaccio. Are you not a man? You're a Pagliaccio. And the word uom, man, falls on an A natural, which is the highest note of this aria. Another two comes later. But this one has to be sung with a lot of hatred, and it's immediately followed by a cynical laugh. So you need to hear a very solid tenor tone here, which has to be dramatic in nature. It has to be filled with hate, and a lot of vocal acting is required. For the next part, from Vesti la giubba until the words Ridi Pagliaccio, it ought not be sung with too much, despair, because he's telling himself to act up, to just be a man, and there isn't that much sorrow here. Instead, it's more of a cynical quality here. It's basically sneering at yourself and telling yourself to be a man up. Don't be such a pussy, mate. And the last part of the aria, which goes Ridi Pagliaccio sul tuo amor infranto, ridi del duol, che t'avvelena il cor. Just 2 lines, but these 2 lines have to be sung with amazing artistry, because before that, it's a cynical quality, but on the climax of this aria, sul tuo amor infranto, the A natural falls on infranto. In that A natural, he needs to go from the cynical quality and transforms into utter despair just in that one note. So you need to hear the change of the color on the note. You need to hear the transition in one note from, hatred, cynicalism, to utter despair and, his life falling apart. Mario del Monaco does exactly that in this performance, which I'm showing now.
Non so più quel che dico e quel che faccio, eppure dopo sforzati, sei tu forse un uomo. Tu sei pagliaccio. La giubba e la faccia in farina, la gente paga per ridere vuole qua, e s'arlecchina di nuvola calamina, di pagliaccio e ognuno tramuta il nazzi, la sposo ed il pianto, in una samara che al singhiozzo, al dolore, ridi, aiuccio, al favore, in recitar mentre preso dal delirio non so più quel che dico e quel che faccio, eppure dopo sforzati, ma sei tu forse tu sei pagliaccio. Vesti la giubba e la faccia in farina, la gente paga per ridere vuole qua, e se arlechin di nuovo colombina, ridi pagliaccio e ognuno applaudirà. Tramuta il nazzi, lo spasmo ed il pianto, in una smorfia il singhiozzo del dolor. Ridi pagliaccio sul tuo amore infranto.
So Canio's second checkpoint comes in his aria near the finale, starts No Pagliaccio non son, but the part that I will emphasize on here is starting Sperai tanto il delirio until Neda comes in. So the lyrics go like this. So blinded was I by my passion that I had hoped, if not love, at least mercy and compassion. And gladly every sacrifice I placed upon my heart, and trustful I believed in you more than in God himself. But only evil dwells in your abandoned soul. Yes, you are heartless, and you know no law but of your senses. Go, you do not deserve my grief, woman without shame. In my disgust I will crush you beneath my feet. So firstly, the tenor needs to start this passage with passion and, sorrow, because he sings, so blinded was I by my passion. And this line, se non amor, pietà merce, this line has to bring out the humanity inside him, because if not love, at least give me pity, give me mercy. This has to be sung with a bit of cynical quality in it, but at the same time, you need to make the listener feel the humanity of the character. And then the first B flat, the first high B flat on this excerpt falls on the word credeva, from evidente credeva più che in stesso, più che in Dio stesso in te. I believed in you more than in God himself. So this B flat has to be sung with a color which is a bit regretful, and it shouldn't be a sorrowful color, but instead a bit of a nostalgic one, like I regret believing in you so much, and it's stupid for me to have thought that. And then he needs to transition into a hateful sound again with bite, because what he sings next is only evil dwells in your abandoned soul, you are heartless, you know no law but of your senses. The second B flat, high B flat on this excerpt, falls on the word abieta, from o meretrice abieta, woman without shame. Abieta is meaning shameful. So that B flat has to be sung with power and with hate. So in just this 1 minute excerpt, the tenor needs to transition from sorrow to hate, which is the opposite direction of the aria Vesti la giubba, from hate to sorrow. So he has to do that, and in this 1 minute excerpt it can really show whether or not the tenor really puts himself into the shoes of Canio and makes a convincing interpretation of the role. So here's Mario del Monaco doing it again, comparing to an uninspired version of this aria.
Sacrificio le cor lieto imponeva, affidante credeva io che in Dio stesso in te, ma il vizio alberga solo nell'alma tua negletta, tu viscere non hai colleggia il senso a te. io stesso in te. Ma il vizio al regasol dell'alma tua negletta dovisce l'amai solleggia in senza te. Fa a non perdi il mio cuore con che brilla
So let's move on to the soprano role, Nedda. The two excerpts I've chosen for the checkpoints here. The first one is the line "Bravo, bravo il mio Tonio, mi far schifo e ribrezzo." Well done, my Tonio, you fill me with disgust and loathing. This is sung after Tonio comes into the scene as Nedda is found out cheating on Canio with another man, which is Silvio. And Tonio comes in with Canio to exercise his revenge. This is what Nedda sings to him afterwards. And why I've chosen this is because it has to be sung with a lot of cynical quality. Aside from that, this is Nedda's lowest note that she sings in the opera, with the word Tonio falling on a low D, and the word ribrezzo, disgust, falls on a low E. So these are the lowest notes that Nedda has to sing, so we can see whether she has chest voice or not. Because even if this is a lyric soprano role, any soprano needs to have an adequate chest voice. Also, you can hear, the cynical quality here that she sings, and also how she interprets the role as a whole, leading to her eventual fate. A lot of times Nedda is sung by somewhat of a soubrette soprano, so by listening to this line, you can determine whether or not the Nedda that you're listening to is an actual soprano that can make a convincing character, or it's just another average soubrette that isn't worth listening to.
Bravo, bravo il mio Tonio.
Fa quel che posso,
È quello che pensavo.
ma di far assai meglio non dispera.
Mi fai schifo il ribrezzo. Dopo di tutto,
Quel che
di quello che pensavo.
ma di far assai meglio non dispera.
Mi fai schifo il
The second excerpt I've chosen is at the finale, at the end of the opera. It starts "Su via così terribile," and I would say that you have to listen until she dies. Basically, what she's doing here is after Canio's rage with his No Pagliaccio non son, Nedda is trying to, bring back the play and continue the play by taunting Canio by saying there is no tragic business here. Come now and tell him that the man sitting with me a while ago was our own timorous and harmless harlequin. So basically what she's doing here is just taunting Canio. So you need to hear her with, the cynical quality and a bit of a comic sense in a way that's, taunting and has a bit of a bite to it as well. It ends on a high B after Canio says that I'll kill you, and she responds, I'm no coward. I will not speak, not if it costs my life. And the high B falls on morte, death, not even if you kill me. Basically, you need to hear a solid high B with a bit of a taunting quality in it. It's not that hard of a role to sing, actually, but you still need to have a pretty developed top register, as we can see here.
E ancor non l'hai capito, non ti cedo il nome con la tua vita, il nome.
No, per mia madre, in devi esser così, quello che vuoi, così non sto zio.
Choice for the checkpoint of the character tenor Beppe is pretty straightforward. He only has one big scene in the opera, which is the serenade at the start of Act 2. Just listen to that to determine whether or not you have a decent toned tenor doing this role.
La tua faccetta mostra mi chiamo baciare senza amor mi cruccia e mi sta tormentar, oh, colombina schiudimi il finestrin che a te vicin di te chiamando e sospirando e povero arlecchino a te vicin arlecchino. La tua faccetta mostrami ch'io vo baciare senza tardar. La tua boccuccia amor mi cruccia e mi sta tormentar. sta tormentata. Oh, colombina, schiudimi il finestrin che a me vicin di me chiamando e sospirando e il povero Arlecchin a te vicin e Arlecchin.
Silvio is a slightly bigger role than Pepe. There's a lengthy scene with Nedda at the middle of Act 1, and the line I've chosen for his checkpoint is E allora perché from the duet with Nedda. The content is basically why, if you must leave me without pity, why did you flirt with me? Why did you love me? Basically, it's a plea for Nedda to love him and to leave with him. So you just listen to this line to see whether or not it's a properly developed lyric baritone who's able to, deliver passionate emotions, and whether or not he has a developed top register. It goes up to an F natural. He has to sing plenty of F sharps before and after that, but not in this particular line. Still, you can see whether or not he can handle the tessitura, because Silvio is most commonly sung by young baritones who have not yet, achieved stardom.
E allora perché di tu m'hai stregato, se vuoi lasciarmi senza pietà, quel bacio tuo perché me l'hai dato, tra spasmi ardenti di voluttà, se tu scordasti l'ore fugaci, io non lo posso e voglio ancor quei spasmi ardenti, quei caldi baci e tanta febbre, ma me sai ricordo. Perché tu m'hai stregato, se vuoi lasciarmi senza pietà, quel bacio tuo perché me l'hai dato, fra spasmi ardenti di voluttà, se tu scordasti l'ore fugaci, io non lo posso e voglio ancor quei spasmi ardenti, quei caldi baci e tanta
So let's talk about the recordings. The first category, good and commercially available recordings. The first inclusion is pretty straightforward. It's because this is the first complete opera recording ever. It's recorded in 1907 under the baton of Carlo Sabajno and the orchestra and chorus of Teatro alla Scala. Canio is sung here by Antonio Paoli, Nedda is Giuseppina Huguetta, Tonio is Francesco Gigara, Pepe is Gaetano Pinicorsi, and Silvio is Ernesto Badini. This recording was done under the supervision of the composer Ruggero Leoncavallo himself. So why I've put this here is because simply of its historical value. Antonio Paoli is probably the closest we'll get to hearing a Canio of 100% authenticity. The rest of the cast is very good also, and of course Leoncavallo supervised the entire making of this recording, so if anything could go wrong, it would have already been corrected by the composer himself. This recording is a no-brainer. Go for it by any means. As usual, I'll put the links to where to buy these CDs and also where to watch them on YouTube, given that they're on there. I've put all the links of any performance I mentioned in the description below, where you can go check it out. The second one in this category I've chosen is conducted by Renato Cellini from 1953 with the RCA Victor Orchestra. Canio is UC Björling, Netta is Victoria de Los Angeles, Tonio is Leonard Warren, Beppe is Paul Frank, and Silvio is Robert Merrill. Leonard Warren and Robert Merrill are two of the greatest baritones ever, and they sing together on this recording. So it's another no-brainer to get. The rest of the cast is also amazing. Björling is a bit too cold for Canio, but it's still a very beautiful voice. De Los Angeles has a correct sound for Netta, a young and kind of taunting sound. Paul Frank is an excellent character tenor, having a veteran career at the Met, and he's in great form here also. The third recording I've chosen here is from the following year, 1954, conducted by Tullio Serafin with the orchestra and chorus from La Scala. Canio is Pippo Di Stefano, Netta is Maria Callas, Tonio is Tito Gobbi, Beppe Nicola Monti, and Silvio is Rolando Panerai. I don't think that Callas Netta is that special because she's not used to doing such small roles, and I mean everyone can understand why. Di Stefano, however, makes a really, red hot Canio. It's not as good as the one he did live from La Scala, which I've put on screen, but it's still a very good recording. Tito Gobbi is a sufficiently sung Tonio, with his evil intent being very obvious. Not the greatest prologue, but I mean, you can understand that. Nicola Monti is a great Beppe. He was Callas' partner in her recordings of La Sonnambula. Panerai is perhaps the greatest Silvio next to Merrill. So all in all, it's a pretty balanced recording, and it's a great one to get because of, Serafin. The fourth one on this list is from 1958. Francesco Molinari Pradelli leads the orchestra and chorus of Santa Cecilia. Canio is Mario del Monaco. Netta is Gabriella Tucci, Tonio is Cornel MacNeil, Beppe is Piero De Palma, and Silvio is Renato Capecci. I'll talk about Del Monaco's Canio in the next category, where I'll present a few of his live recordings. And Netta is Gabriella Tucci. She was also Del Monaco's partner in one of the recordings that I'll introduce later. Cornel MacNeil is an excellent Tonio. He is one of the few baritones that has the prerequisite that I just mentioned earlier of sounding, tear-like quality in the prologue and sounding evil in the actual opera itself. Piero De Palma is perhaps the greatest character tenor ever. Renato Capecci is another big-name role that took the role of Silvio. The last one on the list is from 1960. Lovro von Matacic conducts the orchestra and chorus of La Scala. Canio is Franco Corelli. Netta is Lucina Mara. Tonio is Tito Gobbi. Beppe Mario Spina. Silvio Mario Zanassi. Gobbi I've talked about already. Mario Zanassi is an excellent lyric baritone, known for his interpretation of Renato in Un ballo in Maschera. I'll talk about that in the ballo video. He makes a great Silvio here. Lucina Mara is perhaps the greatest Neda to have graced the stage, actually. This is her best role, without a doubt. Her young, playful, and frivolous voice is absolutely perfect for the role of Neda. Franco Corelli's Canio. Now, let's talk about this a bit here. I think that most people would agree that in the Cavan Pag duo, Tiridu belongs to Corelli without a doubt, and Canio belongs to Delmonico. You can't exactly pinpoint why Corelli was not as popular as Canio as he was in Tiridu. Both were very typical Verismo roles. I would say the reason why is because Corelli had too refined a voice. It's because he's used to doing roles like Calaf and Andrea Chenier, where he has to win the soprano over, and not something like Pagliacci, where Canio is a rage-filled, a very rough character, so to say, and Corelli is too refined for that, whilst Delmonico is perfect for it. With that being said, though, he still displays very, very respectable performance vocally wise here, and his Vesti la Giubba, if you listen to it on its own, it's still a very good recording. Although there has been better recordings of Ascanio, which I will talk about in the next segment. The problem here about this recording is Lovro von Matacic. He does not know how to conduct Italian opera, to be honest. He's an excellent conductor when it comes to German repertoire, but he just doesn't get the grasp of, Italianate sound and how Italian operas is supposed to sound like. So our second category, let's start this off with a live recording from the Met from 1941. Ferruccio Calusio is the conductor, Canio is Giovanni Martinelli, Netta is Norina Greco, Tonio is Lawrence Tibbett, Beppe is Alessio de Paolis, Silvio is Frank Valentino. Now this performance has the best prologue ever recorded in it, and it's sung by Lawrence Tibbett. I've already put it at the start of this video. I've already elaborated how incredible this prologue actually is, and I mean there hasn't been another interpretation of the Pagliacci prologue that comes close to this one from the 1941 Met broadcast. Giovanni Martinelli is Canio. He's in a bit of a vocal decline here, but he holds the first high A in his aria Vesti la Giubba for very long. It's the correct rustic sound for the role of Canio, but I would just nitpick and say that his finale is not as moving enough as it should be. The rest of the cast, Norina Greco is not too much to say about. De Paolis is another excellent character tenor. Frank Valentino, another great lyric baritone that had a successful and long career at the Met. And this is a great performance overall, but mostly it's about Tibbett's prologue. Now, our second one here is another Met broadcast. This time it's from 1948. The Canio is sung by Ramon Vinay, Netta is Florence Quartararo, Tonio is Leonard Warren, Beppe Leslie Chabet, Silvio Hugh Thompson. The Beppe and Silvio here are average, nothing really to talk about. Florence Quartararo is decent, but she's not the best soprano of her age. Ramon Vinay. Now, Vinay was very obviously quite the singer. He was, I believe, a baritone in nature, but he had a really good top register. That's why he decided to market himself as a tenor. And there's nothing wrong with a baritone singing tenor repertoire. There's a lot of things wrong with a tenor singing baritone repertoire, though. It's obvious why. I mean, Vinay makes a really moving Canio. It's really, really good, his interpretation of the role. And Leonard Warren, again, is the star here. His prologue is second only to Tibbetts. He is one of the few baritones that I've mentioned, along with Bastianini and MacNeil, that can manage to deliver a heartbreaking prologue and the villainous character in the rest of the opera. And for the sake of Vinay and Warren, this is definitely worth a listen. Our next recording is again from the Met. Dimitri Mitropoulos is on the podium. Canio is Mario del Monaco. Netta is Amara. Tonio is Warren. Pepe is Charles Anthony. Silvio is Mario Sereni. Again, I'll leave Del Monaco's Canio to a next segment of video recordings because there's simply too much talking that I need to talk about. His Canio, I've already talked about Amara and Warren. Warren is not in vocal decline here, although this is only 1 year before his death on stage. Charles Anthony is a great character tenor again, and Mario Sereni as Silvio is another excellent lyric baritone that made a big career later in his career. Overall, it's a great recording. Dimitri Mitropoulos is a bit wasted as a conductor here because there's not much to conduct in Pagliacci. It's just your typical Verismo opera, not much for you to show off as the conductor, and he is just an excellent conductor. His symphonies are filled with dramatic intensity, and he can't show that here in this opera. So our fourth recording takes us to the West Coast, San Francisco Opera. The conductor is the great Oliviero de Fabritiis from 1962. Canio is Mario del Monaco. Again, I'll talk about him in the next section. Netta is Marilyn Horn. Antonio is Ettore Bastianini. Let's talk about Horn first, shall we? She's not a great mezzo at all. She's nasal. She does not have the voice to, navigate Rossini properly, although she labels herself as Rossini mezzo. But she's decent here as a soprano singing the role of Netta. She has the correct, frivolous quality to the voice. It's nothing really special, but it's listenable, unlike her later recordings. The star here is, of course, Ettore Bastianini, the greatest baritone to have ever existed. This is his only full recording of the role of Tonio. Of course, he's one of the few baritones that can, deliver a heartbreaking prologue and the villainous character, as I've already talked about. But his sound with so much nobility, and it's just so beautiful a voice that there's something wrong with you if it doesn't bring you to tears during the prologue. Just listen to it. Although there's a better version of his prologue, which I'll talk about later in the recordings of arias category. Our final recording in this category takes us back to the Met. Nello Santi is this time the conductor. In 1964, Canio is Franco Corelli, Netta is Lucina Mara, Tonio is Anselmo Golzani, Pepe Franco Hitti, Silvio is Calvin Marsh. Now, Corelli, as I've said, is in better voice here and delivers a much more moving interpretation than he does in the 1960 Matacic studio recording. I've already talked about that. Lucina Mara is also great here, similar to the one with Corelli in studio. Anselmo Golzani does really great in the villainous parts of the opera itself. His prologue, not so much. It fails to move me because of, the dark and evil character quality of his voice, of his innate voice. I don't know why the audience goes crazy after his top A flat. It's a very vocally solid one, but it's not just moving enough for me. Calvin Marsh is Silvio here. He's a decent lyric baritone, although he took on the role of Tonio 4 years later across New York at the New York City Opera, where he did a very famous crack on the top A flat in the prologue. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but he's still a great baritone overall. Now to dark horses, overlooked recordings. First one we have here is from 1930, conducted by Lorenzo Molajoli with the orchestra and chorus of La Scala. Canio is Francesco Merli, Netta is Rosetta Pampanini, Tonio is Carlo Galeffi, Pepe Giuseppe Nessi, Silvio Gino Vanelli. Well, Galeffi is an excellent baritone, but again, he's the type that is just too evil for the prologue, although he makes a very convincing character in the latter part of the opera. Francesco Merli is an excellent voice for Canio. It has the roughness. Again, it's a rough character, but not rough to the ear, I have to elaborate. He has that kind of rustic quality, which we need in Canio, and his arias are not, bland and uninspiring either. They do move you in a way. A more old school approach, probably, but it's still worth listening to. Pampanini is another decent Nedda. Nothing really much to talk about Molajoli, but it's another historical recording with great artistic value. Our second overlooked recording is from 1951, done in studio by Fausto Cleva with the Met Opera Association. Canio is Richard Tucker, Nedda is Lucina Mara, Tonio Giuseppe Valdengo, Beppe Thomas Hayward, and Silvio is Clifford Harvuo. Well, Tucker's Canio is amazing. He is perhaps the finest Canio after Delmonico, because the way he delivers the character of Canio with so much passion. He does not have, a rough quality to his voice. However, you can hear that he sings every single note like he's a madman, gone crazy by his broken heart. And the way he yells the final line, La commedia è finita! I haven't heard another tenor do it like that, but it's unique, although it's not to my taste. Lucina Mara I've talked about. Giuseppe Valdengo is an excellent lyric baritone. Does a great prologue, not so much the rest of the opera. A bit too light for me, not too light for Toscanini. Apparently, he put him in as his Amonasro in the famous recording. I'll talk about that in the Aida video. Thomas Hayward as Beppe, decent lyric tenor. Clifford Harvuo, another decent lyric baritone as Silvio. This is one of the second-rate recordings of Pagliacci. Generally not taken too seriously, but it's still a very good recording in my opinion. Next one is another recording with Fausto Cleva and the Met Opera. This time it's live. Canio is Carlo Bergonzi, Netta is Raina Kabaivanska, Tonio is Mario Sereni, Beppe is George Shirley, Silvio is Norman Mittelman. I've talked about Sereni already. Kabaivanska has an appropriate voice for Nedda. She did it again with Karajan on film. George Shirley is a nice lyric tenor as Beppe. Norman Mittelman, another nice lyric baritone as Silvio. Bergonzi, he delivers a very moving Canio. It's not what you would expect from him, but live, yeah, he does a very good job of such a dramatic role. He did a radio broadcast of Canio in 1951 under Alfredo Simonetto, but back then he still had a bit of a caprino, which is a rapid vibrato, because he had just transitioned from a baritone. Here in 1962 live, he does much better, I believe, and his two arias, Vesti la giubba and No Pagliaccio non son, are both incredibly moving. So if you're about, the tenderness of singing, how it, moves you with a gentle side, this recording's for you. The next recording we have here again features Carlo Bergonzi in the title role, and it is Joan Carlyle, Tonio Giuseppe Taddei, Beppe Ugo Benelli, Silvio is Rolando Panerai, conducted by Herbert von Karajan in 1965 with the orchestra and chorus of La Scala. Bergonzi is in slightly worse form here than the 62 live. It's still decent. It's listenable, but he doesn't interpret the character with so much, gentleness and passion. Jean Carlyle is a decent soprano, not much to talk about. A decent nether though. Ugo Benelli and Rolando Panerai are both, great lyric tenor and baritone respectively. Giuseppe Taddei as Tonio here. Karajan loved Taddei. He cast him in a lot of operas, and Taddei was one of the only baritones who we mostly consider buffo-oriented, but could also do serious characters very well. So this is another perfect role for him because he has to sing seriously, with a heartbreaking quality in the prologue and a bit of a buffo element with, a bit of evil intent in the latter part of the opera. So it's another great one, and Herbert von Karajan conducts the intermezzo like no other conductor does. I love it. I always listen to that recording of the intermezzo, and it's really, really great. So our last inclusion in this category comes from 1983. Conductor is Lamberto Gardelli with the Munich Rundfunk Orchestra. Canio is Vladimir Atlantov. Neta is Lucia Pop. Tonio is Bernd Weichel. Beppe is Alexandru Ionita. And Silvio is Wolfgang Brendel. Now, Weichel and Brendel are two average lyric baritones, so there's not much to talk about them here. Ionita is average as well, but the two leads, Atlantov and Pop, they're both really great. Atlantov is in a bit of vocal decline here. He's singing a bit rough here, most likely due to his age, and it's a bit uninspired to my taste, but vocally it's still very solid and it's still a sound that you can enjoy. While Lucia Pop, a bit late in her career in 1983, but again, Neda is a perfect fit for her. It's someone like Amara. She has, although a small, but a young and frivolous voice, which is what you need for a Nedda. Gardelli is an excellent conductor. He's done other recordings of Pagliacci in studio, but I believe this one is better than the 1967 one he did with James McCracken and Pilar Lorengar in the couple roles respectively. Now let's move on to video recordings. The first one I've chosen here features Mario del Monaco in the title role. This is again not a single recording, but a series of related video recordings. The first one is from 1953. It's recorded for some sort of American TV and an advertisement, I'm not sure, but only about 10 minutes of that has survived. It does include the three key moments of, Canio's role, though, which is the top B at the start on A 23 Ore, his Vesila Giubba, and also his finale, No Pagliaccio non son. Paolo Silveri's prologue is also captured on video. It's a very nice one. The next one we have is from 1959, from the Bolshoi Theatre, conducted by Alexander Melikpasheyev. Mario del Monaco is the only one singing in Italian here. The rest of the cast sings in Russian. It's not very high quality singing by the Russian cast. Neta is Leokadia Maslenikova. Tonio is Alexei Petrovich Ivanov. Pepe is Nikolai Timchenko, and Silvio is Eugene Belov. Only 30 minutes of the video recording has survived, but the full audio recording is here. He sings very well here, Delmonico, in Russia, but it's not nearly as good as the Metropolitan one from the same year that I've talked about earlier. Now we come to the gem, what I consider the very best recording of Pagliacci ever. This is from Tokyo, 1961 live. It's a video recording conducted by Giuseppe Morelli, the underrated conductor, with the NHK Symphony Orchestra. Gabriella Tucci is Neda, Aldo Protti is Tonio, Beppe is sung by Antonio Perino, and Silvio is Attilio Dorazzi. Now, let's talk about the rest of the cast first, shall we? Protti is a decent Tonio. He's very vocally solid in the prologue, but it's not a very moving rendition. However, he does demonstrate villainous instincts in the rest of the opera. Attilio Dorazzi is a nice Silvio. He struggles a bit with his emission here, but if you've watched my Tosca video, he delivers an excellent Scarpia with Corelli and Parma. If you haven't watched it, go watch it after this video. Gabriella Tucci is an excellent Neda. I mean, in the finale, I've never heard another soprano deliver Neda's lines so cynically as Tucci. Of course, she's a great soprano. She did anything from Gilda to Aida, so Neda is a perfect vocal fit for her. Now, Mario Delmonico. Wow, wow, wow. You cannot stress how incredible this performance is. From the very first notes he sings, you know that it's going to be a miracle, especially when you see his acting as well. His Vesti la giubba here is top 10, if not top 5 recordings of any single aria ever recorded. It's incredible. I've already shown you that recording earlier in the video. The first top A is sung with incredible hatred, incredible cynical quality. The laugh after that note is bone-chilling. I mean, it's an incredible performance, but the best hasn't even come yet. As he progresses in the aria, he changes from this deliberately nasal, acidic, hateful tone, and with one note on sul tuo amore infranto, that note, that top A. Wow, it's probably one of the best notes that a tenor has ever sang. It's incredible. Before that note, all of his singing in the aria is filled with incredible hatred, but in that one note he transforms all that hatred into despair. You can hear how he starts off the note with a tight vibrato, with a solid vocal quality. It's very solid, but as he holds the note longer, at the very end of the note, he lets his vocal cords loose, he loosens the vibrato, and after that, with the last lines, he utters Ridi del duol che t'avvelena il cor. At those lines, he had already, collapsed entirely with despair, and what a recording, what a top A. The audience absolutely explodes. I mean, it's incredible. The finale, No Pagliaccio non son, I've already shown earlier again, because it's simply incredible, the stuff he does in this recording, in this video recording. The first B flat is, of course, pensive in nature. It's colored gorgeously, as if he's regretting his love for Neda. The next B flat is again filled with hate as he transitions in the opposite direction from sorrow to hate. And oh my, this recording, I can't get enough of it. The thing that pisses me off is that it's in mono and the audio engineering is terrible, honestly. But it doesn't matter, it's still on video, it's still a listenable sound. Fun fact, there's also a stereo recording from, I think, 3 days later, the second night of these performances. So if you value the audio quality over, the acting and having a video recording, go for the stereo one, although Monaco doesn't sing quite as impressively on that one. The opening night here is just the best performance ever of a Canio, and with that reason alone, it's among my favorite opera recordings, and without a shadow of a doubt, this is the best recording of this opera that you can get out there. I've talked about this one for so long, but by any means, watch it. It's an experience that you'll never forget. Oh, then we have the other video recordings of the opera. The second one I'm going to talk about is from 1946. Giuseppe Morelli is again the conductor, this time with the orchestra and chorus of Teatro dell'Opera di Roma. Canio is sung by Galliano Massini. Nedda is Olnelia Finesci. Beppe is Gino Sinembergi. And Gabi sings two roles, both Tonio and Silvio. Massini is an excellent tenor, if not a bit too solid here for the role of Canio, with not much vocal acting going on, but it's still a very gorgeous, solid tone. Finesci is a bit too big of a voice for Nedda. It's a bit bulky, but she has some beautiful vocal colors as well. Sinembergi is an excellent character tenor. He is a very good Beppe. And Gabi sings both Tonio and Silvio. He's a bit too, rough for Silvio, in my opinion. He's the perfect fit for Tonio, save for the prologue. I've already talked about him before, but this recording is still good. It's a film production, by the way, which is the only way Gabi could have done both roles, because there's about a minute in the opera where the two has to sing together. So let's move on to our third one, shall we? This one is conducted by Alfredo Simonetto in 1954 with the orchestra and chorus of Rai. Canio is Franco Corelli, Nedda is Mafalda Micheluzzi, Tonio is Tito Gobi, Beppe is Mario Carlin, and Silvio is Lino Puglisi. I've talked about Corelli and why he is in the perfect fit for Canio. He also has a bit of a caprino here, a rapid vibrato, which he himself considered a vocal fault that he did not correct until 1960s. Micheluzzi is a decent Nedda, not much to talk about though. Tito Gobi I've already talked about his Tonio. Lino Puglisi as Silvio is another baritone who had a big career after that. All round, it's not the best vocally. It's not the most impressive Pagliacci you can get, but Corelli's acting here is not bad, and if you're a Corelli fanatic, by all means go for it. Look at how he interprets the psyche of Canio. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Yet another film interpretation we have here for our fourth inclusion. When Karajan conducts the orchestra and chorus of Teatro Scala in 1968. Canio is the Canadian tenor John Vickers. Nedda is Raina Kabaivanska. Tonio is Peter Glossop. Beppe is Sergio Lorenzi, and Silvio is Rolando Panerai. I've talked about Panerai and Kabaivanska in their respective roles, so let's go to Vickers. Vickers, I've never been his biggest fan. He is dry vocally here, and he's too much of, accustomed to Wagnerian singer to be doing Italian roles. Nonetheless, it's still vocally solid, although not the most convincing singing by the tenor here. Peter Glossop, the British baritone, is Tonio. He delivers a on-par prologue, and the rest of his opera is also fine. Although his projection is a bit woofy, that's just a personal taste for me though. All around, it isn't the best film interpretation of this opera, but it's still balanced and it isn't like terribly one-sided. An affair, Karajan is again great in the intermezzo, and I mean you can go for it if you're a big Karajan fan. The last video recording here is a live one actually. It is from Covent Garden. The conductor is Robin Stapleton from 1976. Canio is Placido Domingo. Neda is Adriana Maliponte. Tonio is Peter Glossop. Beppe is Francis Edgerton. And Silvio is Sir Thomas Allen. Now, Domingo. His early cameos are okay, I would say. There are two recordings from 1967, both of which I haven't found in full, but I've listened to her Vesti Giubba from both of these recordings, and it's really, really good. He sings with pathos, he doesn't sing with nasality, but here in 1976, his vocal problems are already getting quite significant. However, he still sings with a ton of pathos here, and although there are a few strained high notes here and there, the problem of nasality is still not, to the extent where it's unlistenable, which would be the case from the 80s onwards. Yeah, the Georges Prétre film interpretation from 1982 is one to avoid. I'll talk about that later. The rest of the cast, we have Peter Glossop here again. I've talked about him. Adriana Maliponte is a decent Neda. She sung Mimi with Corelli. She's a very, small voiced Neda, but it doesn't matter. She has the appropriate, vocal quality for the role. Thomas Allen is dreadful. Francis Egerton, nothing to talk about. But there aren't, that lot of video recordings of this opera. So if you need a video one, go for the Monaco Tokyo. It's the best recording of the opera anyways, regardless of having video or not. Now, famous recordings to avoid. The first one is from 1976, conducted by Giuseppe Patané with the National Philharmonic Orchestra of Wales. Canio is Luciano Pavarotti, Neda is Mirella Freni, Tonio is Ingvar Vixel, Beppe is Vincenzo Bello, and Silvio is Lorenzo Sacomani. Now, I must say that Freni and Sacomani are excellent singers. They do their parts in this recording as well. However, Luciano Pavarotti is just not the voice for Canio at all. You can listen to his Vesti Giubba on its own. I find it okay, but for the entire role, I won't recommend listening to it. He simply does not have the vocal power and, the roughness required for the role. Ingvar Vixel is a dreadful baritone. He sings very throatily, he barks, and he does not have a dark timbre at all. I've talked about that in my previous Tosca video. So, it ruins the recording for me, regardless of Freni and Sacomani's great singing. So don't get that one. The next one I have on the list is from 1979, conducted by Riccardo Muti in studio with the Philharmonia Orchestra. Now I must say that Muti is an excellent conductor, but the problem here is the cast. Jose Carreras as Canio, the same case as Pavarotti. Scato as Neda. Renata Scato is way past her prime in 1979. It's an unlistenable sound in the 70s onwards, and I don't recommend you hear that. Kari Nurmela as Tonio is a great baritone. However, the other baritone, singing the role of Silvio, is Thomas Allen, who's dreadful. I already talked about him. Ugo Benelli is a decent Beppe, but that doesn't make up for the dreadful cast. Next one we have here is probably the most famous production of Pagliacci, conducted by George Prêtre, with the orchestra and chorus of La Scala in 1982 as a film. Canio is Domingo, Neda is Teresa Stratas, Antonio is Juan Pons. All three leads here are in dreadful form. I've never been a fan of Pons. He's throaty and he does not sound like a baritone at all. It's a very savage sound, which is not pleasant to the ear at all. Domingo in the 80s is already, demonstrating his worst form as a tenor. Nasality is predominant here. Strained high notes, not a nice sound to listen to. Teresa Stratas is also past her prime in the 80s. All she has left here is, a string of voice that doesn't do any justice to the role of Netta. George Prêtre is not bad. The filmography is not bad either. But just by looking at the cast, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to watch it, because there are better options out there. The next one we have here from 1992 is again conducted by Riccardo Muti. It's not his fault again. The orchestra is Philadelphia Orchestra. Canio is Luciano Pavarotti, Neda Daniela Desi, Tonio Juan Pons. I've already talked about how Pavarotti and Pons are not ones that you should listen to in Pagliacci. Daniela Desi, a young version of her here. It's okay, it's listenable, but you can't compare her with the sopranos of the Golden Age. Lastly, it's a 1994 live video recording from the Met Opera with James Levine conducting. Canio is Pavarotti, Neda is Stratas, Tonio is Juan Pons. I've already talked about these three and why you shouldn't hear them. Silvio is Dwayne Croft. Dreadful. The filmography is not bad, but I mean, it's just not something you want to listen to. I'm baffled by how it has like millions of views on YouTube. It's the most viewed production of this opera. It baffles me. It's a terrible recording. Don't go for it by any means. Again, if you need a video recording, go for the Delmonica Tokyo, because it is the best recording of this opera. So let's talk about recordings, great recordings of arias and excerpts from this opera. The first one is an obvious inclusion. It's Enrico Caruso and his famous Vesti la giubba. Now there are three versions, one from 1902, one from 1904, and one from 1907. I think that all three of them are equally impressive. It does not get better than, Caruso singing this aria. This was the portal for me to proper, emotional, and evocative operatic singing, and it still remains one of the greatest recordings ever to this day. Now, the 1907 recording is accompanied by orchestra, while the 02 and 04 are accompanied by piano. The 04 one, however, has the composer Ruggero Leoncavallo himself on the piano. All three of them are equally as good. I'll recommend you to listen to all three of them because it's impressive. The 1907 recording was actually the first recording to have ever sold 1 million copies on the entire world. So the historical value, the artistic importance of this recording of Vesti la giubba is unparalleled in all of opera. You can listen to other versions of Vesti. Delmonico's version in Tokyo still remains my number one, but you can't deny that this is the single most historically important version of this aria, or perhaps any aria that was recorded. In the 1907 recording session, he also recorded the finale, No Pagliaccio non son. It's another great recording of the aria. It's second only to Delmonico's. Again, it has orchestral accompaniment, and it shows Caruso in his best form. The two B flats are sung with so much color. It's a rounded tone, but it's such a colorful sound, and there has been no tenor that has been able to repeat his feat. Next, we have two more versions of the aria Ves la Juba. The first one I'll talk about is the Spanish tenor Miguel Fleta. His version of this aria. Oh wow, it's heartbreaking. He sounds hysterical in this recording. Reminds us somewhat of Delmonico, but his tone here is much more tear-like, and his timbre has been the subject of much discussion. It's one of the most beautiful timbres that the operatic world has ever heard. Carnew is a bit of a heavy role for him, although he did participate in the world premiere of Turandot. He sang Calaf once and never did again. But his recording of Carnew's aria here is really convincing, and it's on par with the Caruso and Delmonico recordings. Another recording of this aria, which I adore so much, is American tenor Richard Tucker's version of this on the Ed Sullivan Show. There's a video recording of it. Again, he sounds absolutely hysterical in this recording. Every note he sings depicts a madman. He's going mad. This is even better than the studio one in 51 that I just talked about, and it has his acting as well. It was the good old days of TV where, great operatic singers would, go and do these live, film these. You can buy this recording on the DVD with other legendary operatic performances on the Ed Sullivan Show, and it's something worth getting. Well, of course, you can watch it on YouTube, which I will put the links down below, and it's quite an experience. Now we come to our final two inclusions in this video. These are two versions of Tonio's prologue. The first one I've chosen is Gianni Maffeo, Italian baritone. He's a really underrated baritone. He just passed away earlier this month. He was a great baritone, but he was really underrated because he did not want to go into stardom, because he hated the vanities of fame and all that. So he only sang in small opera houses and did what he loved to. Although he did make a few recordings, primarily for Supraphon, the Czech Republic-based recording company. I think most of the recordings that he had done are already out of print, which includes this Pagliacci that he did, although we can still find one of his discs with Italian opera scenes and duets with the underrated soprano Eddie Amadeo. Now this prologue is quite something. He sings this with the color of a bass. I believe that he is actually a bass, because he sung small bass rolls at La Scala, and because he had a great top register as well, he could do baritone roles in relatively less demanding, smaller opera houses. It's different hearing a bass sound doing this prologue. Again, it moves you. It's a very tear-like quality. It's very heartbreaking, and it's one of the best interpretations of this out there. The other one is Ettore Bastianini again. I've talked about his full recording, but this recording of the prologue from 1963 is superior to that one he did live in San Francisco in 1962. This one is from one of his concerts recorded over radio for RAI in the year of of 1963. This one, he showcases a better vocal solidity, as well as much more emotion and nuance than the 1962 one. I think that the Maffeo, Bastianini, Warren, and the Tippett recordings of this prologue are absolutely unparalleled. It's one of my favorite arias as well. The lyrics are incredible. Leoncavallo has done a great job in writing his own libretto and putting it to music, and I never fail to cry every time I hear this opera. It's an amazing opera, and it's been a pleasure making this video again, and I hope to see you soon with my next video, which will be recommendations and reviews of Lucia di Lammermoor recordings. And until then, keep safe and peace out. Bye.